Fred Detective.
Ancient sands, heed my command.
You know what happens to a toad when it's struck by lightning?
And reclaim these relics of
I think I'm kinda gay.
Morphin' time!
Kinda gay.
The same thing that happens to everything else.
If the apocalypse comes, beat me. Beat me. Beat me. Beat me. Beat me.
Welcome to Real Hot Nerd Shit, a pop culture podcast where real hot nerds talk about real nerd shit. I'm your host, Ryan.
And I'm your co-host, Shauna.
And on this episode of Real Hot Nerd Shit, we'll be talking about the movie The People's Joker in our...
Wait, I thought we were talking about the really important trans movie that's coming out and that's up for all these awards. And that's not The People's Joker?
It should be, is what the answer is.
Okay. Because I was like, what else could it be? It's I Saw the TV Glow. That's what it is.
My note
not that one either?
No, it's not that one either. In my little script, it says we'll be talking about The People's Joker in our theme of movies that are better than that shitty Oscar awarded one. Did it win? I didn't even... Okay, anyway, sorry. Pause. Introduce our guest.
No, right into... So on this guest, we have a very special guest, Jaclyn Moore, who is a friend of mine who we had found out that we had a very funny thing in common a few years ago.
Hello.
We both ended up... Yes, hello, welcome.
Hello. We did find out something fun in common.
Jeez, I can only imagine.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I'm at a party at a friend's house, and all of a sudden... my high school came up, and I went to a purportedly all-boys high school that is a Catholic school. And so I was, I love telling my favorite joke, which is, well, because our, one of our tagline is in the motto, the theme song of the school is, we're all Ignatius men forever. And I'm like, well, we're not all men forever. And so it always makes me giggle. I was really, I was being a man for others back then. That was,
yes.
Let's go. I'm going to hit all these. If you
For
know,
the
you know. I'm sure there's one Ignatian grad somewhere in there. But when I made that joke, they're like, well, wait, do you know Jaclyn Moore? And I was like, actually, no. And I'm like, yeah, well, she was, a couple years before you. And I was like, oh my God, that's such a small world that we would both have this experience at the same school. I was like, because I knew other queer kids, but I didn't know another trans person. And I was like, oh my gosh, this trans woman. So I looked her up on Twitter, and I was like, hey, by the way. And so being in each other's Twitter DMs was how our friendship started.
It is. Although I would like to clarify, I believe you were a couple years before me. No. I'm the older
one. Wait.
Yeah.
You were.
Yeah. I'm the older one. Whichever way is the way that I'm the older one.
Yes.
As I'm 30 or 40 years old.
Correct. While Jacqueline and I are just hanging out in our mid-30s indefinitely.
Yeah, exactly. I've been in my mid-30s for a few years now, and I look forward to the next decade or so of it, and it's going to be great.
It's a beautiful time. So I am just thrilled because this sounds so corny, but I don't know a lot of people in the biz, but it is a fascinating world that I would love to hear a snippet of how you got into media and any prize projects that people should know you for or check out or etc.
Yeah. Well, the things you might know my work from is I was a writer, producer, and eventually co-showrunner of Dear White People on Netflix. I was hired to be a writer and producer for the first 3 years of that show, was promoted each year, and then Justin Simeon, who created that show and is a very good friend of mine who we met doing that show, asked me if I would run the final season with him, which was amazing. And then I showran the reboot of Queer as Folk, which is currently unavailable to watch on any streaming service.
Is it really?
It has been removed from streaming services, but you can still buy it on iTunes and probably find it on the high seas. It's pretty good. There's actually a plot point
I enjoyed it.
in the movie that we are going to watch that is very similar to a plot point in the kind of seminal episode of that version of Queer as Folk, I would say. Certainly the trans episode of that version of Queer as Folk. Um, and then most recently, I've been show running, co-show running, and writing and producing the Peacock show based on a true story, starring Kaylee Cuoco and Chris Messina, which is a very fun, and Melissa Fumero, Amy from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, is a very fun sort of Coen Brothers-y, two suburbanites in over their heads with murderers and crime, and it's a very fun show. So give that a watch, so that we can get a third season and I can keep having a job, because that's nice. And I broke
Okay,
in
so
randomly.
yeah.
I broke into the business totally randomly. I went to NYU for playwriting, and just knew I wanted to write scripts, write movies, write TV, write theater. And I wrote a bunch of stuff. Nobody read any of it. And I put up plays off to the power of 100 Broadway. Um, and nobody saw them. And I did stand up comedy. And people did come see me do stand up. I did stand up for a number of years in New York. And then I had fallen into working in the media. I was hired at BuzzFeed in its early days. I worked at GQ. But it was actually a Twitter account that I created with a comedian friend of mine, Josh Gondelman, who was one of the writers on John Oliver for many years and was the
Yeah.
showrunner on Desus and Mero eventually. We created a Twitter account back when Twitter was fun called Seinfeld, Modern Seinfeld Today. And it was basically what Seinfeld episodes would be if they were today. Like, what would modern plots of that show look like? And that led us both to getting signed with agents and getting Hollywood careers, because we had a bunch of scripts that nobody would read, and suddenly people would read them. And for the last decade or so, I've been writing TV and movies and trying to just stay in the business. And I was able to transition during that time, and they didn't kick me out. So hopefully that means I get to keep being a Hollywood writer, a fancy pants Hollywood writer.
I'm like, obviously, Dear White People is a favorite. This just is a reminder that I need to go back and watch the last couple of seasons, because now I feel even more compelled. I just like stopped watching, just, out of that thing that happens.
That thing that happens.
And Queer as Folk, I've talked to Shauna about this. She has another thing that she has encouraged me strongly to do or consider. I worked at the LGBT Center of Greater Cleveland during the Pulse nightclub shooting, and knowing that was what centered, like, that was kind of one of the pivotal parts of like the very first episode. I was like, I don't know if I can handle that, but I feel, again, even more compelled, just one, now talking to a showrunner of the show, but Shauna and other people have like really said you kind of have to get through it, because it's,
it's a show I'm really proud of. And it's a
yeah.
show that starts with a tragedy, or at least
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't start with a tragedy, but the pilot episode is built around a Pulse nightclub like shooting.
Mhm.
And that is obviously a very tough thing and a very hard thing. But like, one of the things that I'm really proud of about the show is that it's actually not about the tragedy.
Sure.
It uses the tragedy to explore queer joy in the face of pain and in the face of hatred. And it's actually something that I think especially now feels pretty resonant. Oh, hello. My cat has joined.
Hi. Who's that?
That's Estelle. Hi, Estelle. Whenever work is being done, she decides she has to go on the computer. But it's a show about community coming together in the face of tragedy. And it is available to purchase on iTunes. I don't think it's that expensive. I recommend people do that, or again, whatever, find a way to watch it. It's really good.
We're all
matey.
we're all of a certain age
Maybe.
that we have criminal records related to the internet, but
No, but
Yes.
honestly, I really was, and you hit it. I think that it is actually very appropriate to watch at this moment in a way that, like, because everything is such a fucking nightmare that it is nice to kind of have something that is about a different nightmare that you can then find your own sense of joy about, as we are doing that with, such as being here today talking with you all. Like, and it's those ways of trying to find the joy through it and the perseverance that our community is so incredibly known for, because
Right.
we've unfortunately had to be. And
Right.
so I yeah, can't I would highly recommend it. And I felt very connected to the trans character, obviously, in it, who also went to a purportedly all boys school run by the Jesuits.
This may be a
So
very autobiographical episode about Shauna and my high school
Oh, I
experience.
can't
Not
wait.
together, but separately.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, separately but together in the
Yeah.
because
And
I
it
was a
is
senior when
not.
you were a freshman, so we did overlap,
Oh my God, that makes
but
the fact that you
briefly.
were a senior when I was a freshman makes our DMs feel
Mhm.
so much more charged.
Oh
I
my
know,
god,
right?
you sluts, you nasty little sluts. So we before we jump
That's
into
the
we already kind
tagline. That's
yeah,
Yes,
that.
two
you nasty
nasty
little
little
sluts.
sluts.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so before we jump into the general banter portion, one of the things that we always ask, so this podcast is about being a nerd, and you can be a nerd about all sorts of things. So if a nerd is someone who is weirdly knowledgeable and passionate about something that some people might find uncool, Jacqueline, what are you a nerd about?
I'm an odd nerd in that I'm like equal parts obsessive about sports, and like I'm I've watched every single Cleveland Cavaliers game for the last 20 years, 25 years. But I also have a Stephen Sondheim knuckle tattoo. So I'm like I'm a musical theater
He
faggot,
contains
but also
multitudes.
a you know um a sports queer. So I'm very deep into into musical theater, but I also like literally I have a cassette deck sitting next to my computer right now because I've gotten very nerdy about making old-fashioned mixtapes.
Oh,
Like this is like a Phoebe
honey.
Bridgers, this is a Phoebe Bridgers Ethel Kane like live only mixtape that I've been playing lately,
Amazing.
which has been really good.
Okay,
Which is
so
also
do
just
you
like
just like hold a tape recorder to your like
no,
speaker?
no, it is currently it hooks up to my computer, and so
Oh,
I can go find great like YouTube bootlegs and recordings of different performers and put together mixtapes. If you actually look behind me, you will see a shelf of just cassette tapes. You'll
oh my
also
god.
see a bunch of typewriters. The cat is currently sitting on another typewriter. Um, I am a real nerd in like so many ways.
Yeah.
Um, I, I definitely have an ADHD diagnosis that I've very much earned, and I have lots of special interests.
Uh, for several of those reasons, you and my ex-husband would have a blast together. He is also obsessed with Stephen Sondheim. Like, did one of the last shows he did in Cleveland, because now he lives in DC, was a show called Sondheim on Sondheim,
Oh, I love
and
Sondheim on Sondheim.
yeah, I obviously saw it, multiple times because he was in it, and I never really thought of myself as a Stephen Sondheim fan. And then I was like, oh, okay, because I am a musical theater homosexual. It's through and through. Um, my first tattoo was almost the comedy and tragedy masks, and
Incredible.
I know my mom was like, "You can get whatever you want, but I'm telling you, don't get that." Like,
Though it would be fitting for this episode.
correct.
Mm.
Ooh, I'm so excited to talk about this episode. So before we jump into it, let's get caught up on what's happening in the world. First and foremost, to Shauna's absolute delight, and arguably something that she has predicted and perhaps spoken into fruition, as it sounds like perhaps Jacqueline has as well. Uh, Guess who's back in the house? It's the Cleveland Rockers, our very own WNBA team. Shauna, tell us everything that we need to know.
So I'm so excited. The WNBA women's sports is booming, and the WNBA especially. So They recently just added another franchise in Golden State, the Golden State Valkyries, and they're like, all right, we want to add one more with then another potential two. And we went through all of the cities, and about a month or two ago, we'd seen a report that some trademarks had been renewed by the WNBA, the Cleveland Rockers being one of them. And sure enough, it came out. Dan Gilbert, boatload of money, loves putting it into the things that he does. And so he's like, all right, I'm just going to build another new fancy practice facility for the Cavs closer to their arena. And then the already state of the art practice facility that they already have in Independence, that can be for the WNBA. And it's perfect because having that space, having the fan base, we were this close. We finished second in the NWSL soccer bid. We were very close to having a pro soccer team. Yeah, and so when we didn't get a women's soccer team, I was like, all right, I'm really hoping that it's like, okay, y'all can support one women's team. And I was like, please be the Cavs, because I don't care about I wish I cared about soccer. I want to like soccer so bad.
It's
But
so hot. Soccer is a really sexy sport. At least I think so.
It is. No, absolutely. And it's a very gay sport, or at least it was for a goodly portion.
Mia Hamm taking her shirt off with that sports bra changed a lot of people's lives.
I mean, I am a season ticket holder to the Angel City FC, which is the women's soccer team in LA, and it is great. And I love those girls. I mean, they were terrible this season, but the joke is they literally sell merch that says LA's biggest lesbian bar is Angel City FC.
Amazing.
So it's great. That said, I am so excited the Rockers are coming back. It's taking everything in my power to not run to my closet and grab all of my vintage Cleveland Rockers jerseys that I have bought off eBay.
Why? What? Why? Go, let me see something. I want to see something.
I have so much vintage Cleveland Rockers gear that I've gotten over the years. Let me see if I can find it.
I'm so excited.
Me too, because I was literally just thinking about, first of all, how bad I want Cleveland Rockers gear. Second of all, I'm certain that I have some lesbian friends that have like classic Cleveland Rockers merch.
Oh, I'm sure.
I can't find the shirt. I can't find the jerseys easily, but I do have a vintage Cleveland Rockers Eastern Conference champions, which actually didn't, like RIP.
When did they leave? What's the appropriate term? When did they break up?
When did they break up? 2000. I was going to say early 2000s they left because Gordon Gunn folded them because it was not making any money. And really the WNBA has only started becoming more profitable. I mean, they're not profitable yet, but they've started to show a path towards profitability in the last 5 years. So it feels like a big moment.
It's not uncommon. Like the NBA had a very similar
the NBA, please.
Yes, right. I'm sorry, the MNBA.
Thank you.
Yes.
Get it started properly.
The MNBA. No, it's true. Leagues take a long time towards profitability. I think it's often thrown in the W's face that it's like, oh, you didn't, like they're there on like the dole from the NBA. But actually it's like, no, it's an investment, as all leagues are, until they blow up. And the NBA almost folded like multiple times early in its, existence. So this is a very exciting time. I cannot wait.
We also absolutely need to have Jacqueline on when we finally figure out a way to do the women's sports episode. Because I'm sure that would be a wild conversation. Very down. So what's like, I don't know. I literally don't even know what's the timeline. When will I be excited to
So reportedly 2028 is going to be our first year. Yeah.
Too far. I don't like it.
I know. It's but
because there are two new teams that are, or two new or one new team starting next year.
It's going to be Golden State this year and then Toronto next year, I think.
Yes. Yeah, that sounds right.
I was in strategic planning for the last 2 days, so I genuinely am like raising my hand because it's just like been reburned into me in terms of behavioral change. The fact that it's Golden State and there was, Golden State, what was it, lost in 3 or whatever, I don't remember, whatever everyone used to
blew a 3-1 lead.
Yeah, they blew a 3-point lead. Yes. Yeah. So I don't know. I feel like there's a joke there. And I just don't know what it is yet. But Someone will
I'm
find
just
it.
expanding the rivalry.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it is unfortunate though, because the Valkyries have a very amazing. I love their color scheme. It's like it's
The
really
I need to
good.
name
see it
is
because that's
awesome.
such a good
This,
name.
yeah,
Yeah.
everything about it is so good.
I'm very yeah. Shout out to my
So
friend
good.
Laura's
Oh, and it looks like
cousin
a
who is loves.
fucking
She's so
vagina.
excited for it.
That's a
Yeah,
pointy
it's
ass
very
vagina.
Yannick.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, that's pretty great. That's pretty great.
Yeah. Wow. Sickening. Absolutely fucking sickening. God, everything is better for girls. Well, except for like, a lived experience, but their shit's cooler.
Other than that,
Other than that, Um and then in, perhaps sadder news, we learned that Michelle Trachtenberg died today.
R.I.P.
Man, she was
Mhm.
39.
Literally, like grew up with her. Like she's
Yes.
this about the same age as me, and like I remember seeing her on P and P, and then
Yes.
like that was like where I'm like, oh my, like she
Harriet the
was a
Spy.
peer. Yeah,
Yeah.
Harriet the
Harriet
Yeah.
is,
Spy, Dawn and Buffy, of course.
We'll come back to her in 1 second. Did either of you watch Gossip Girl?
I was not a
Mm-mm.
Gossip Girl person.
Yeah, no, same.
Mm-mm.
But
Shauna?
Eurotrip meant a lot to me.
I
Yes.
loved Eurotrip. She was so good in Eurotrip.
She was so
Okay, and it
good
was
in
such a
Eurotrip.
absolutely worth a rewatch. Like I want to go back and see it like again.
I'll
Like
do it because I
although
don't think I've ever actually seen it all the way through because I bought it as a bootleg DVD in New York City.
Oh my God,
And
I love.
I'm pretty sure was it the same year, but anyways, it was a really shitty quality bootleg. It was like someone literally holding a handy cam in a movie theater. Like it
oh my
was,
god, those
I
were the
never made it
days.
through. Yeah, right. Um,
Oh,
so there's an interesting conversation that Sean and I have had that I'm just noting for now is just like the way that each of us approached femininity growing up and like what we did, like where I chose to engage because of my perceived cis ishness, that like
sissiness.
yeah, exactly.
I
That,
believe
but the
that's the
sissy is
technical
spelled with
term.
a C in this
Yeah,
instance.
yeah.
Yeah, actually,
Mhm.
I'm very comfortable with that as a perhaps a new moniker for my gender identity as it continues to evolve and change. I am a sissy, but with a
I
C.
mean, been
Let's
there.
see.
Because Gossip Girl was for the girls. I just didn't like it because I don't particularly like, I call it white girl television. Like I like white women television. I like, give me a Big Little
Hmm.
Lies. Give me a, if I need them to be walking, if the main characters aren't walking around holding goblets of Chardonnay, I'm not interested.
You need Nicole
Um,
Kidman and a hairstyle.
thank you,
Yeah,
thank you so much for understanding me.
Mhm.
yeah.
Um, so, anyways, Michelle Trachtenberg just gone way too soon, and I'm very glad that in more public forums, people are starting to realize that in the entirety of the Buffy universe, in characters that were introduced and kind of disliked by the public, Dawn is the most redeemed in terms of like, yeah, she was
Hmm.
annoying. She was a 14-year-old girl, duh. And then you watch her growth over season 6 and 7, which I'm doing right now. And I just watched Potential. Are you a Buffy person, Jacqueline?
I am not a huge Buffy person. I have seen a few seasons of it, but it's not
Okay.
my. There are just people
Just
in my life who would be mad about the fact that I am not a Buffy person.
yeah, no, like you're talking to two of them
Is
right
one
now
of
because
the
when I tell you it just dipped down to a little bit, like I really was
Same.
kind of I was really hoping that you were going to say yes, but
I know.
whatever.
I know.
I didn't watch all of your shows, so that kind of feels fair that
There you go. It's
you
a
broke my
trade-off.
heart. There's like a balance there.
It's true.
Um,
It's a real trade-off.
um, Dawn was never that annoying. Even like she was, she was tough to adjust to because there was no teen presence really. Like even when they were teens, they were always, aged up in terms of like their style and their like level of emotional intelligence and general maturity. But like Dawn was a teenager and teenagers are
mm,
fucking annoying. So if anything, she did her job too well. And then, I just watched Potential. That's what I was saying. Which is an episode where Dawn thinks that she might be a potential vampire slayer, and she has this whole like, sort of coming to her understanding of like what her role in the Slayer world is, and like, spoiler alert, she's not a potential Slayer, and she like gives up the power so quickly. Anyways, and the very last scene, it's also one of the only scenes that I ever really am like, fuck, I do love Xander sometimes. Xander and Dawn have this conversation about being the two normal people amongst these super powered individuals. And it's just fucking beautiful. And Michelle Trachtenberg acts her ass off in that episode, specifically that scene, to like it's a standout moment in that it makes me like Xander. It's like at this point in my life, that's saying something, that it makes me be like, oh, Xander.
Yeah, shout out to all the cishet straight people in our lives. That's saying thing. Like,
hey, Anthony, by the way, he texted me when he was listening to the last episode and said, obligatory podcast reference text. So here's the next one, homie. I swear it's coming up completely naturally. So everyone pour one out for Michelle Trachtenberg. Why can't fucking Joss Whedon be the one that died already? Like, it's not fair that we lost Michelle before him. Also, quick question. My recollection of her role in the sort of exposing of the toxicity of who that man is, like, she never actually said anything other than like there was a rule about Joss couldn't be alone in a room with her.
Right. I think almost in many ways, like her handlers or her, like the people on set were hopefully prevented that from being anything because of how he was, which is in its own way damning, but also thankfully.
Yeah.
Whoa. Yeah, that's a bad. I can't tell you. I feel like it's something that it's really weird for a showrunner to not be able to talk to an actor by themselves. So like the fact that whenever you hear someone's like, oh, they just weren't allowed, like the Nickelodeon guy, when it's like, oh, he wasn't allowed on set anymore. Oh, he wasn't allowed to talk to, if Joss wasn't allowed to talk to Michelle Trachtenberg by himself, it's like, that's unusual. That's not like, oh, I don't know how Hollywood works. Like, no, that's
exactly. Yeah, that's pretty cut and dry. Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah. Like, so much of my job is talking to the actors, and so much of my job is like answering questions they have, and if they don't like a scene, like working it through with them and figuring out whether, there's a way to clarify it, or there's a way to like make them more excited about it, or to express to them the intent of the scene in a way that maybe they didn't get upon first reading. Like, whatever it is, that's a huge part of the job. And so to just have part of that job cut off where it's like, oh, they can't be alone together, like, that's very damning.
Yeah. And like, again, and I'm pretty sure that if I recall correctly, that's like the only thing she spoke out. Like, several of the other actors gave like much more detailed accounts, and granted, she was only on it for 3 years, but so was Charisma Carpenter, but she was also on Angel, so that was a separate thing. But yeah, I still to this day I hope that Sarah Michelle Gellar gets the freedom to be able to talk freely about what her experience was like.
She's going to get to with this reboot.
I'm hoping so.
That's a press tour I'm excited about. Is Sarah Michelle Gellar's press tour around the eventual reboot coming out?
I totally forgot about that, Jacqueline. Thank you.
Yeah. I just can't imagine.
And we're back.
That won't be the thing. Like, if you're promoting a new version of Buffy that's like a sequel series or whatever it is, like, there's no way that the press tour is not going to be all questions, or at least many questions about how is this different than last time.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I think one of the things that I'm excited about, in obviously like my blood pressure just went up like 30 fucking clicks or however it's measured, but you know, fans have so much more access, and like the Buffyverse was always very kind of like out loud with the fact that like they checked the forums, they like read what the fans
Yeah.
wrote, and now to have such a greater connection, like she's gonna have to say it one time, and she's just gonna have to say something clear enough that everyone knows that this conversation does not need to keep happening. It only needs to be talked about once, and that's that. But whatever it is, I bet she's already started working on it, because I'm certain people have already started asking.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
Okay. So let's jump into our media of the episode, the People's Joker. So, Shauna, you were the one that turned me onto this film. Jacqueline also shared, I don't remember if we were recording or not, that, you know, she's like in love with it as well. So what are your all's connection or backstory to it?
Well, I had seen it originally that it was rumored to be coming out, but they were having a lot of issues with copyright and trademark and whether it was a fair use of likeness for parody. And if you watch this movie, you'll be like, oh,
Yeah.
no one's going to watch the movie and think, gosh, I think this is the real Joker, Harlequin, Batman, Penguin, like, and Lorne Michaels. Like,
Yes.
no one's like, this is a very serious thing.
Yes.
You know, like no one's gonna be confused. And I'm, you know, it got like, you know, it was at like different film festivals and it was pulled suddenly,
Yeah.
and I was very excited to see it. And then thankfully it aired at like a small art house theater near me, and I adored it. It was
Where did you
so
see it?
weird and so good. It was the Case Western Reserve Theater
Oh, I don't even know
that's
that they did
there.
movies.
Yeah, somewhere like there was like something right around there. I'd have to look it up,
Okay,
but
got it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Cool.
I love this movie. I also just heard the buzz about it. Vera and I are like friendly on the internet, but like have never
I
met
was gonna say,
in
I'm like, I
person.
feel like I'm like, this is like one of those like, so Jacqueline's great for me being like a degree of separation from like pretty much any famous trans person in the world, and I love that. Like, I'm like one
Yeah.
or maybe two at most, and I love that for me.
Yeah, so I don't know. I've never met Vera in person, but
Oh,
we've
okay,
we've
okay.
DM'd and talked a decent amount.
Yeah.
I really I was looking forward to this movie. Um, I actually missed it in theaters. It was showing at a theater near me, and I didn't wasn't able to get there. I actually bought a ticket and then like was sick or something. Um, so I bought it on VOD when it came out, and I bought the Blu-ray just to like support because there was that well whatever there was a whole thing about like piracy around this movie that I
I
think Vera got unfairly I think people were being kind of unfair to her because she financed a lot of this movie herself and was in great debt because of this movie and in legal, jeopardy at times of like having this thing repossessed. It seemed. I don't know that from her. That's just like from like the news reports about it.
Commentary. Yeah.
Um, and people were like, "Well, we should be allowed to see it, and we should pirate it." And she was just like, "No, I'm in great debt for this movie. Can you please
Please
support
don't.
trans artists?" And so I did. I wanted to. I bought this movie 3 different times, if you include going a ticket to going to see it that I missed.
Love
Um,
that.
but it's incredible. It's just like it's it's such a uh like punk rock primal scream kind of like shouldn't work. It's like a miracle of a movie. Like this
Yeah.
movie should not work. It's like very DIY aesthetic. It's like randomly will be video game graphics for a scene. It'll randomly like it's just one of those movies that's like it is bootstrapped however is possible to get it done, and like it's very self-aware about that and like makes really good jokes about that as it goes. I love this movie's sense of humor about
it
both
is
itself.
art.
It
It is
is. It
art.
really
It
is.
reminds me a lot of watching early John Waters movies.
Sure.
Um, like I just saw Multiple Maniacs, which is like a very early John Waters movie, at a local art house cinema this past weekend. And like this movie feels very of a piece, but actually like way more ambitious in a lot of ways. And I think I was so excited to see it, and it when it first started, I was a little like, okay, this is, I don't know about what's this going to be. And then it just truly makes me cry. I've watched it so many times since the election.
It's so funny.
It is
I have
really
It's
such
funny.
an
so funny
allergy
and
to trans
poignant.
work sometimes,
Ugh.
self-hating transphobia. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I just have such an allergy to like, and I've made some trans work that I'm sure other people have an allergy towards like
An
people talking
allergy.
about their transness in art. And this movie,
With a great mirror scene, like doing her makeup,
yeah,
like with
but this,
dramatic slowness over the
but this,
lipstick.
I know, and yet
Yeah.
this movie, like everything that I usually don't like about trans art made by trans people. And by the way, for the record, I love trans art made by trans people, but it's just like that thing when it's your
Yes.
story sometimes.
Yes.
It sometimes feels like, oh, this is like the 101 stuff.
Yeah.
Like,
We're not the audience.
we're not the
Yes.
audience. But this movie, I feel is I am so the audience for this movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it like just feels like Vera is like speaking my soul into existence. And I just it feels like a magic trick. I love this movie so much. 100 estrogen pills up. Um,
Maybe a whole
So
so
batch. Swan dove into.
Swan
Yeah.
dive into it. So I put it in like if you look at the comments, Shauna, if you want to like walk us through those because it's kind of plot driven and it'll give us time to point out maybe like particular things that we liked. First and foremost, being that the movie is dedicated to her mom and Joel Schumacher. And for those that don't know, Joel Schumacher is the director of the campiest Batman movies, which I just thought was so. I think I said before, like this like I'm sold right away. I saw a Joel Schumacher out loud reference and I was like, cool, I'm into
I
it.
mean, it's textual in the movie, even like we see a recreation of that version of Batman
Yes.
with
Yes.
Nicole Kidman's infamous character Chase Meridian, I believe, is the character. I think they give her a different name. I think Vera gives her a different name in the movie because of copyright stuff. But in the movie, I've always loved that her character name is Chase Meridian. Um, but the
And
nipple sex scene is iconic.
and they also there is a specific line when the Poison Ivy character is describing what happened and she says something about she uses the exact words of Batman and Robin. She says filled my lips with venom. And I was like,
Oh,
what weird attention to detail that only the girls will get because as I was like, there's no way they're about to. And I like said it along with her, like at the same exact time. I was like, only the girls remember these lines. As I told Lady Freeze when I pulled her plug, this is a Wonder Woman
oh,
show.
it's so good.
All right, get us
So
started, John.
good. Okay. So the protagonist who was originally, and I love, and this is something that you did as well.
Feel
I
free to
love the like
self
bleep.
edit, by the way.
Yeah. I love the bleeping of the dead name. I think that's a
Yes,
really great touch, and one that I'm a big fan of because it's not
me too.
important, and like,
Yes.
but yet like you still need to have it,
Something
story
that was
wise.
also done really wonderfully in a little show called Queer as Folk,
Ooh.
and also had I will say has the same powerful moment that I think is played very well here of the first moment you don't hear the name bleeped.
Yes.
So I shouts to Vera Drew. I think great minds think alike.
Mhm. And so, growing up, feeling out of place in a conservative home with an overbearing mother, and so she finds solace in comedy while struggling with her gender identity. And I mean, really, I think that's why there's so many like funny trans women because there's like a lot like like you really have to learn to like laugh at yourself and everything in life at points because it's such like it's all like surreal at times,
It is.
like,
Or I
and
can
so I
understand.
just really appreciated that. And
Yeah.
so she then escapes to Gotham City, hoping to become a comedian in a world where comedy is tightly controlled by the corporate monopoly run by UCB, United Clown
Okay.
Bureau.
Dead,
Dead.
dead.
The first time,
Mhm.
and like they didn't even have to say UCB. Like when they said whatever the fake name was, I was like, she's swinging at UCB. Like, damn,
Mhm.
what an indictment.
It's so spot on too. I mean, UCB satire is the most well-earned satire, I think, in some ways. I mean,
Mm.
that's not true, not in the world. But it's just I think of this and I think of BoJack Horseman, which both have great UCB. In BoJack Horseman, it's like a Scientology um, situation, and here it's just so accurate. And so the scene at UCB where pre-transition, it asks her name, it asks one other thing I forget, but then it like measures her dong, and it's like, oh, you're a white man, you're good to go, you get a career in comedy, and it's like, yep,
Yeah.
that is how it feels.
That there was a I don't remember what the other part was, but the next note that I have is about the relationship with her mom. And, like, she says, "Do you know how crying makes your mother feel?" When I, like, threw myself onto the ground, I was like, man, Vera, if somehow by way of internet communication you hear about and choose to listen to this podcast, like, what a fucking genius you are, because those those scenes with her mother were quite tough in how, like, real and grounded they felt. Like, you have a mentally ill mother too. Like, got it. Okay, got it.
Hmm.
It's so incredible. And I mean, I'm sorry, Shauna, you're trying so hard to just get through the plot, and I'm
No,
like
no, but
jumping
this is what
around.
we do.
Yeah,
Like,
But
this
this
is
like
how
is
we do
part
it.
of, like, it's the jumping off point for these because it'll make us think of it.
one of the things about Vera's work here is like also Vera's character becomes in this world there are joke man that you're either a joke man or you're a harlequin, and so like the girls are harlequins and they don't get to be funny, they just get to be sexy, and the boys are joke men, and she's becoming Joker the harlequin. That's like how what she transitions into. And part of that process and that coming alive and discovering oneself and all of that, or accepting oneself, she knows from a young age, is in dating Mr. J, who is a version of Jared Leto's uh, Joker, um,
Which
who
I
is a
feel like this
trans.
is more spot on to Joker than fucking Jared
Mm.
Leto's. Like,
Yeah,
much better
true.
done, this guy.
But the but is played by a trans man, and like one of the things that I responded so deeply to in this movie is the idea of like you really see the cycles of abuse that I think so many of us in the queer community deal with and don't know how to talk about, which is like the abusive mother, in this sort of mentally ill gaslighting, you make me sad,
Mhm.
your crying hurts me, like that thing. But then the T on T, the queer on queer
Yes.
abuse is like
Yes.
so fucking real. And the way that that abuse is like kind of set up by her relationship with her mother, and that like
Mhm.
it almost she's primed for a narcissistic abuser, and it's such a powerful and like profound. This movie makes me cry like in 600 places. One of them is in the scene. It's all around the time where Vera's character is explaining the signs that you're dating a narcissist, signs of narcissistic abuse. Um, and I always forget the exact line, but she says something about like, you were the first person that saw me. And I hate that I have to give you that. Like, and that feels like so in conversation with the way her mother doesn't see her, and the way that the abuse, these two characters kind of rain on her, feels like two sides of the same coin. It's just
It's
this movie is
beautiful.
so fucking good. It's so
Yeah.
fucking good. I am in awe of how brilliant she is.
So the relationship with Mr. J, um, there were a couple of moments that really fucked me up in that same regard. Um, you know, Tiny backstory. So I'm transracially adopted. My whole family is white. I had the uh, I received a lot of anti-Black messaging from the people that were supposed to be the closest to me, and it did a lot of damage to my ability to develop as a human being. And so I don't, I identify as non-binary, and I recognize that that is different than the experience of trans people in a lot of ways. But that idea of literally like having this like spark inside of you that is just continuously like deadened and harmed is relatable in a lot of ways across that. And also fuck Rachel Dolezal for you trying to use transracial as a real thing while I'm sitting here talking about like the trauma of like actual transracial adoption. But one of the things that I don't remember what Mr. J's prompting line was, but Vera's character said, I had no idea. I wasn't even sure I existed. And like, I just wrote that line out of context. I didn't put anything else around it. And so it took me a second to remember. And then it like, when it clicked back in what it was talking about, it like hit me again of like, I have in the last few years really started to understand that my experience of like not knowing what I want to be when I grow up with giant air quotes around it was not the same as what everyone else's experience was, in that I just never pictured myself as an adult. I just had I had no frame of reference. Like when I got married, I promise you, I had never thought about my wedding other than the idea of dancing with another man. Like everything else around it didn't, you know, exist. And so there's a lot of really fucking poignant lines about that trauma that she goes through with her mother. And again, just absolute fucking kudos in general. However, one of the things to pivot into more of the humor of the movie, because it is also a very fucking funny movie. So they kept talking about comedy legends, and then, of course, because most of those comedy legends are fucking disgusting humans, they would have to like add in like, you know, like I don't remember if they actually did say Bill Cosby, but like, you know, but Bill Cosby, but before any of the drama, or like, you know,
Yes.
before we knew any of the bad things that he did, like they used that as kind of like a recurring punchline every single time. I was like, ooh, oh, like, okay, good. Like,
It's so funny.
Well, no. Of course, before, yeah, like
yeah.
Of course.
And like we all agree, obviously, that's what we're talking about. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Bill Cosby, Woody Allen, Louis C.K., I think maybe another, but yeah, it's always before the I think it's before the unfortunate, and and then it's like, oh yes, of course.
Of course.
It's so funny.
Yes.
God, this movie is so, I feel like Chris Farley on not to cite one of the objects of satire of this movie, SNL, which by the way, there are a couple brutal Colin Jost burns in this movie.
I do kind of remember, but I don't remember what they are.
There's one where I believe there's at least one where he is directly compared to a Nazi, and that Michael Che is also directly compared to a Nazi.
I do kind of remember them coming for Michael Che too.
But I just feel like I'm Chris Farley and the Chris Farley Show in this, where it's just like everything about this movie I just love.
It's really cool.
But it's just so earnest. And I think like from one of the things I'm really interested about in this movie is the way that it uses adaptation, and the way that it's like why this movie is actually a great example of fair use, which I know is like part of it, you know, it's literally the disclaimer at the beginning of the movie.
Right.
But it's such a great use of adaptation to recontextualize and to like make meaning out of a trans experience for, I think, a pretty wide audience, even though I think as a result, it speaks almost more deeply because it's asking you to like put transness in these archetypes, these heroic archetypes, or villainous in this case, archetypes, which I think is not an accident either. The idea that transness is only seen through like a villainous lens in this is like, just like that fact alone. Like if I made a movie where I just directly talked about the trans experience and directly did all of the things. And I made a show where we directly talked about the trans experience in some ways, but even that was about like, okay, how do I bury this in like the hyper specifics of my youth? How do I bury this in like, so it doesn't feel like it's a universal experience. It feels like I'm talking about a very specific experience. For this to take in a lot of ways, like a very like broad experience of trans, a broad version of the trans experience that I know is, I think, true to Vera's experience in a lot of ways, as it's true to many of ours. But like by pairing that sort of like almost universal trans kind of experience in some ways with this language that we all share, these characters that we all know, and putting those in conversation with one another, suddenly these connections occur in the material that wouldn't otherwise be there. For instance, the villainous, the idea that like transness is experienced through a villainous nature, the idea that like, or like that you are cast as the villain in society.
Yeah, it's
The
deviance in general.
Yeah, it's deviance. It's, and also by like doing it, it just as a result, this movie is like so hard on its sleeve, directly earnest in a way that like I actually feel like it's very hard for a movie to do without, at least in my experience, in my case, feeling, and this is maybe my own bullshit that I need to work through, where I sometimes will get a little eye rolly about stuff. And I don't eye roll about this because it's like, oh, it's like so earnest. It like shoots the moon. It's like so earnest, but then like put through these like archetypal characters in this way that it takes on new meaning. And it contextualizes transness in part of an American story that we tell ourselves. These are our myths. DC comic books, all these stuffs are our mythology. And Vera has that speech. I'm just giving a speech now, I guess. I'm sorry.
Like, and it's very compelling.
But Vera has that monologue where she talks about life isn't a comic book, but like these, it should be. And it's like, I think part of what that's about is like, these are as much our archetypal stories that we tell ourselves and tell like Joan Didion's like we tell ourselves stories in order to live. Like society tells itself stories in order to like propagate and continue itself. And like superheroes are the modern version of that oral tradition. And before that, it was like gods and you know the fucking like Greek pantheon. And you know, between those times it was the Western hero or the, you know, all these like genre things. By putting it in this context, it makes meaning of these things. And I just like, I don't know, it just it bowls me over every time. I like,
and I think
if you are listening to this and you have not watched the movie, you have to go see this movie.
Very, very hard to agree. I think one of the things that, you know, you kind of touched on it, like in its earnestness, it's also, or like in the meaning making of it, there are some parts that are just like bashing you over the head, like saying, you know, these are signs of a narcissist, which is a classic part of the relationship between Joker and Harley, like the original DC characters. He manipulates her. However, in the ways that he manipulates her, which obviously there's a lot of commentary about that for, you know, the controller in a relationship, even if we don't want to say the narcissist, you know, the one that maybe holds a little bit more positional power. She finds herself, and similarly, like Mr. J, he's a monster. Like, it's inexcusable, but also, you know, you mentioned it earlier, like, you were the first person that really fucking saw me. You saw you in me, and that was a me that I never even imagined. And holy shit, it's just like, if you can't
that is Harley and Joker.
Exactly.
Like,
exactly. Because, and again, to even, you know, double down on like how easy it is to buy into these things when we want to. Like, if you want to, you can see yourself in this movie regardless of your gender identity or not. Like, if you are trans, non-binary, cis, whatever your gender identity is, like, you can see yourself in this movie because we always see ourselves in other media, such that we shipped Joker and Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy into existence. Like, that was just queer, perhaps headcanon, but like, it was, you know, they definitely picked up on it and then added more subtext, and now they're just fully fucking gay. And you know what? That's the power of homosexual thinking. and I didn't even remember that they are on your shirt, and that feels even more telling for just how psychically connected we are. Okay, so let's keep the plot going. But there was one thing I did want to ask. In like all of these summaries, it talks about her struggling with her gender identity, and like, outside of the obvious like questions, I never really viewed it as struggling. I just saw it as a that's kind of what a self-discovery process is. Like, what did you all do you feel like that's a fair word?
Well, like, I mean, I definitely like. I feel like, especially with like the Smilex gas and like the like
Mm-hmm.
conceal don't like. It's why like when I was first like coming out, like I always thought of like Elsa and like when like conceal don't feel like that felt very akin to transness and how we were often taught, if not overtly, like subconsciously, to treat our senses of selves. That it's better to hide it away. It's better to not show it. It's gonna make our moms cry, so let's just keep it away. And I think that is absolutely something that I felt very like that struggle where like when even if whether whether you don't know, whether you're trying to figure out, it really prevents that dialogue even from happening before it even happens.
Yeah, and I think that I would say it's a struggle. I mean, in real life, it was definitely a struggle for me. Um, but I think Shauna's so spot on with like the struggle is less about. I mean, some of it's self discovery. Yeah, some of it's a process of self discovery. Um, but like one, that process is like very struggle filled. As a child, asking your mom, "Am I born in the wrong body?" and your mom being offended, and like realizing, "Oh no, I'm not allowed to ask certain questions," and like
Right.
the struggle with that,
Yeah.
and even. But then it's like the struggle against society as you start to realize you are seen as villainous in these ways, and you are, you know, yeah, I don't know. I think struggle. It's funny because it's not a traditional struggle. It's not like a. I'm
Yeah.
torn between these
But
two
it's
things.
but it's
It's
not fitting the
more.
mold. Seeing the mold in front of you, knowing you're supposed to step in, knowing, oh my gosh, look at me. I get to be a comedian. This should make me happy. And like, but
Yes.
it doesn't.
Yes.
That is where that struggle comes in when you see that disconnect, even when everything's going right, it still feels wrong.
And
Yeah.
I think what you both sort of like illuminated for me in talking out. I'm an external processor. Sometimes I just have to talk about
Yeah.
stuff
No, that's great.
because
Podcasts are
when
great for that.
yeah, exactly. Hearing struggle, I automatically think of just how overused that word is when it comes to the queer and trans experience. Like, it's not all a struggle to figure out who you are. It is often the external pressures that make it a struggle. Like, in an
Yes.
ideal world, the process of understanding that you are trans, or the process of understanding your racial identity amidst no one with your shared racial identity, like, it would be a lot smoother. But that's not what the fucking world is. And like, that's what the struggle is. And so I think the use of it and how I usually internalize it as being kind of eye rolly, like, oh, a cis straight person wrote this line. Like, I feel like any time a story is centered around identity development, struggle is always used. And it's like, I just don't know that I always see the struggle, but I am absolutely hearing it in, the individual relationships of it all, and the cognitive dissonance of getting all the things you want and not feeling happy. I hear that for
I mean,
sure.
that's, I think, what you've hit the nail on the head, where it's like there is a struggle often in the discovery. There's a struggle in figuring it out. And that struggle often comes with the state because of the stakes that society puts on you. Like,
Mm,
oh, it's not just I can try out being a girl for a little bit. It's
right.
if I do this, I lose a bunch of stuff. I'm like perceived differently. I like this do figuring this out comes at cost. But even when there's not a struggle in like the answer to who am I, there's a struggle once you see, like, it's kind of like figuring out who you are is finding the mountain,
Yep.
becoming who you are is climbing it. And this
Bitch, if
movie
you
to
don't
me
say
feels like the struggle is about climbing the mountain. Um, and that's
I need to pause for one moment just on that sentiment because yeah, that's it, isn't it? Like, because again, in a world without the external factors, like that is a smooth uphill climb. But when you think about all of the ways that, like, and even just in the setbacks that happen, like, you can move stepwise forward and encounter, obstacles that slow you down. And I don't like know that I meant to keep going with the rock climbing thing, but I kind of feel
You
like
can though.
committed to it now.
Look, it worked for
Um,
Celeste.
like to be able to like recognize that there's also like missteps and sometimes you fuck up in that and like it actually sets you back a little bit more because fuck, I developed this whole sense of self, but I developed it with a narcissist, so now I have to refigure that shit out because that's a whole new thing. And like, oh, to be clear, that wasn't me being like tongue in cheek. My ex-husband is a delightful human being, not a narcissist.
No, but
My
that's
mother, though,
well, you're
narcissist.
right though, because even in this movie, right, like part of Mr. J's backstory in this movie, which is again such a great piece of adaptation of Batman, is the idea that Mr. J was Carrie Kelly, who was in the comics is like the girl Robin.
Yeah,
Um,
the
and
redheaded Robin.
the redheaded Robin who was like in this version of the story groomed basically by Bruce Wayne and transitioned. And part of the narcissism, and even calling it narcissism, I mean, they're certainly behaving narcissistically, but
Sure.
part of what's happening is people are just doing their trauma to other people. And
Yes.
like, so you're taking real things from the comics, recontextualizing them as like, oh, that is kind of creepy. Like in the same way that Joker and Harley Quinn have always had this narcissistic abuse built into their comic dynamic. There's always been the creepy joke, or there's always been the fun, silly kind of jokes about the inherent creepiness that is Batman taking on all these teenage wards. And
Yes.
like the way
Here's
this
your underwear to go out in public with.
yeah,
Oh
the way
my
this
god.
turns it
Like,
into the way this turns it in and recontextualize it as grooming and abuse that then we see the effects of on that person's next relationship. To me, what the magic trick of that is it helped like for me as a queer and a trans person who's like had abuse in her life, like it makes me feel seen. It makes me feel like it gives me language. It gives me new language for ways to discuss something that happened to me. But I think what's great is for someone that hasn't had that experience or who isn't queer and isn't trans, it actually like takes those jokes that we've been making in society forever. It actually puts teeth in them and gives them something to think about around their trans and queer people in their lives in this new way where it's like, oh shit, like I maybe don't know what that is, but when I think about it as Carrie and Bruce Wayne, that actually like gives me sort of, as dumb as this sounds, it gives me context for an experience that I don't otherwise have. And that
Yeah.
is like also a magic trick. This movie is like what this movie is doing through adaptation is fucking brilliant and like
Truly.
works on a level that I think is like people like underestimate this movie based on its DIY aesthetics at their peril because what is going on is actually
Pearl.
so much deeper and so much more nuanced than I think a lot of people might think upon first glance at, oh, it's a movie about transness where she becomes Joker the Harlequin and like that's how it works. Okay, cool. Like
Yeah, instead of diving into whatever white shit turns her white in, her origin story, she dives into a bucket of estrogen.
the best.
Stunning. You
Yeah.
love to see it. Her skin was so fucking silky smooth when she got out that bitch,
Yeah, and
And
she
it's
was
gonna
just like
be.
tittying.
fucking seals. I don't know why I said seals in terms of like smooth skin, but
She looks kissed by a rose.
get
So
the fuck out, Shauna. Boo! Do not applaud her. Boo! I Jesus Christ. Okay, so before we get to like the conclusion of the movie, there were just a couple of other things that I noted that I wanted to talk about. At one point, I did just write "I'm obsessed." Like I fully realized at a certain point that I was like in love with this movie. There was a RuPaul fracking joke. I don't remember what it was, but we love a fracking joke.
So just like to catch us up to like what's happening in
Yeah.
the plot is that
Yeah.
she hacks Batman's drones and basically gives a message because Batman is going to host. Batman's running for office, and Batman's going to host. Or is Batman running for office? Maybe not. Maybe Lex Luthor's running for office. But anyway, Batman's going to host UCB Live, which is a stand-in for SNL,
Yeah.
and so the Joker the Harlequin, hacks Batman's drones that go around the city, policing the city, and instead basically challenges Lorne Michaels, who is played by Maria Bamford,
I screamed when
which
I
is
saw that.
incredible, and challenges Lorne Michaels to instead have her host because that would be a more defiant thing to do. And so that leads to the climactic rebellion, is sort of the build up to her hosting UCB Live.
Yes, and I think that was like a obvious extra kick to the ribs for when SNL had Trump host, like because I don't remember what I can't remember the candidacy thing of, but Batman had essentially like everyone kind of knew at that point that Batman was an asshole and like he did not need to have a platform as big as UCB Live, and that's obviously a very similarly shared sentiment to when they put that fucking idiot up on SNL's stage. Like I lost a lot of respect for a show that I have loved since I was a child.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah,
Lots of good SNL jokes in this movie too. I particularly like the part where Lorne Michaels says, "We have a very talented cast and incredible writers." It's sort of surprising that the show is just kind of uneven. So she gets brought into UCB Live, where she will host an episode, but also be a part of the cast going forward. But
the
first,
diverse cast,
the new and the new, not new and improved. I think new and diverse is I think new and diverse cast. But she first has to go through training with Raisa Ghul, which I think is or Rasha Ghul. I'm trying to remember what the non-Raza Ghul phrasing.
Raish? It's
Raisha
there's
Ghul
Raish I believe is the
the like avoiding the lawyers version of it.
Yeah.
But so she goes through the training, and then sort of upon training's completion, where she learns about the prophecy of the People's Joker who will rise and sort of defy all these things. She learns that she's hosting the show, but can't do it in drag, quote unquote, even though she points out it's not drag, it's just her clothes.
Right.
But she can't do it in drag because Lorne Michaels wants to get people used to her situation. And Raja Ghul's like, this is just I'm just the messenger. You don't like, I'm not saying I agree with this. And so she decides to defy all of this and instead, embrace her revolutionary place as this, comedian. And she's also not allowed to talk about Batman. And so instead she goes on, in her full situation, in her, beautiful. She looks, also Vera just looks so hot.
gorgeous.
Like so hot. I just want it to be said. So she goes on and does her running bit of the saddest story I've ever heard, or the saddest day of my life. Only it's about Batman being basically like a groomer. And and through that, I don't know. What would you say happens at the end of this movie?
Her mom shows up and tries to the end of it. The film ends with a mix of triumph and uncertainty as she claims her space in a world on her own terms, knowing for the battle for creative and personal freedom is ongoing. Thanks, ChatGPT.
But she goes to like another dimension.
It's a mixapixtolic.
Yeah.
Because they're in the fifth dimension.
God.
Yes.
Mixelplix.
Mixed pixel. I can never say it, and I just always like mixed pixel. Yeah, no clue. It's that guy, the little guy from Superman.
Yeah. and she gets a chance basically to be reborn as something else, which is, I think, one of the moments that makes me cry every time. Is this like
Mm.
very sincere song, and the fact that she doesn't want to be someone else. She wants to be this person. She wants to be the person that she's become and that she made herself into. And it's something that like
Mm.
makes me cry just thinking of the idea of, she's like, I could be cis. I could come back as, something different. And instead it's like, no, I like really like the Joker that I am. I really like the person that I am. And it's something that like, to me, just is like, I mean, whatever. It's like it's like such a queer, like, it just feels like a real like rallying cry and like a real like defiant, like, I mean, it's not to be a musical theater faggot here, but it's La Cage aux Folles, like I am what I am, like, and that it's just like such a triumphant moment, and I love it so much, and it makes me cry. And
It's very that sentiment that I think that many of us share, that I've mostly just seen as like a, a meme or something. But like, given the chance, I would be born queerer and queerer every time. I would never want to be anything other than I am, which again is essentially, the same message, because it took me this long to love this person. Why would I want to do anything else? And there were a couple of lines that I wrote down. So her mom comes to see her do the show, and it obviously, it goes kind of kerflooey, and her mother is like mortified, and uh she has at this point already broken up with Mr. J. So she breaks up with Mr. J, one of the other important parts of the end of the movie, and they have a really sort of genuine conversation about how they not got to where they are, but like the line that she says, I don't know who said it to who, but you can't blame yourself for repeating the only cycle you ever knew. We all want family. Like, yeah, you chose to be with someone who was not the right person for you, but at the end of the day, that's just, you have to forgive yourself for just trying to recreate what you thought was you were supposed to recreate. It's
and
human nature.
which is so devastating. And I love that that exists in a movie that also has a joke about it's a queer coming of age story. Of course, it's about chosen family, which I think is so
Yes.
funny, like such a good meta joke. This movie just like contains multitudes of
Yes.
deep sincerity and then just like deep taking the piss out of all of it. And I love
Yes.
both parts of it.
It gets us. And I think it
Yes.
really, like, you couldn't write it without that lived experience, because it just, there wouldn't, that teeth wouldn't exist. And I think that's
Yes.
always why the funniest comedy comes from the self, and it comes from experience.
And from the people with the most trauma. Um,
Yeah, just ask Sean
A
about
lot of
going to I
experiences.
was just gonna say, just ask Sean about going to a concert with me and my friends, as we made an Uber driver very uncomfortable as we were all dressed to the like fucking so slutty and like so femme, and we're just all talking about like what boys we are, like just a boys' night out, just night out with the boys.
It was the funniest thing. And so like I had, and so just to set the stage, so like I was staying with Jacqueline, and then we all of a sudden, like your partner and some friends and all, like everyone like all came over, and like so we're all getting ready. It's like a really cute like scene. And so like the four of us, we put the doll and dolled up, and we're all ready to head out. And we go into this Uber, and it's this guy, and then just like, oh yeah, just boys night out, guys being dudes as we do.
It's fully
Like
out.
they just like, and
It's
it's
like
like for
hardly
like
covered.
10 to 15 minutes all the way, just like kept going, and I am just dying laughing at this. And it was just such a surreal thing, and
Nemesis.
like such an LA experience for my very like Midwest trans ass that I would
Yeah.
never dare. But I love that in this we're like, no, this is the like taking the piss out of it all.
Yeah.
And also another element of that, I very rarely get the experience of being the shortest woman in a group, and I loved standing in the circle of all of us at the concert, and I was like,
Yeah, I'm a
this is
tall
what my
girl.
turn is. Yeah, I was like, I'm
It
not.
was a 100 Gex show too, just to make it even train.
Yes. So that is a very okay, yeah, exactly. It is what I tell to the 20-something trans people I meet that I saw at the 100 Gex in LA. It like gives me a lot of cool trans cred for being an older trans. And so I love that for me. And
Did
so
you
that
say
is
being
like
an
now
older tran?
that is true. Yes.
Yes.
That is what I
Oh, okay.
yeah.
I don't
Like,
know if
no,
I'm
no,
allowed to say that,
I'm
but
not a regular millennial. I'm a cool millennial.
yeah,
Like, yeah,
carry that.
like,
I know what's happening.
yeah,
Um, sorry, go ahead.
no, no, just, but that was a very, yeah. So like seeing like 100 Gex show, and I'd never heard of them, and I was like, oh my gosh. And then like literally, of course, then for the next like year after that, I was like, oh, I saw a moment that I did not realize I was seeing. And
Mhm.
also this
Kind
sweetheart, I will never forget her finding me like noise canceling earbuds because it was the loudest show of my life, and just like absolutely saved the day, my hero. Like she
oh.
was, it was the best.
Very mom
Yeah.
coded
Um,
sometimes.
the same. But I don't know if you said dom coded or mom coded, but either
Truly
way,
both. Truly
both.
both.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
Ask Shauna about either.
It's true.
speak of side comments, I almost interrupted your story several times as one does, but
No,
um,
please.
you said like I witnessed a moment of that I didn't know was a moment, and I was kind of like when I saw Dua Lipa open for Troye Sivan at the Lakewood Civic Auditorium.
Whoa, good
Yes.
pull. That's
Yeah,
great.
I don't think Dua. I mean, I was Troye Sivan was the headliner at Lakewood Civic Auditorium, and Dua Lipa. I like didn't really know her. I had heard her name a couple of times, but now she's fucking Dua Peep. Um,
Look, when I saw, and this was, she was already in the process of blowing up, but when I saw Chapel Roan here in Cleveland, I said
mhm,
that day, this is how I know we can support a WNBA team. Because seeing the absolute line all around the flats of all of these femmes in pink and camo, because that was the theme, I was
yeah,
like, this crowd showing up like this, like,
we're
we can
good.
support this.
I
We're
love
good.
it. I love
And
it.
now we're getting a women's sports bar. Did you hear about that? We're getting a women's sports bar too.
No, but
Is
I
it
have
going to
to
be
come out.
cleverly named?
It's the W.
Oh, that's good.
So I think it's cute. No, it's cute. Like, and
That's
it's gonna
cute.
be like it's gonna be right there in like Gordon Square. Like it's so it's
Cute.
got it like it's got a really good location.
Oh, okay. I had this idea. Oh, I'm so annoyed. I really wanted to the place that is now Cozumel on Lee
Mm.
Road. Um, it was available for a while, and it was a great space, great patio, and uh, I really thought it should be like a lesbian-owned women's sports bar, but during the day it's just like a cafe, so that it can also be a
Smart.
fucking sober hangout for people that want to go to queer spaces. And now look at that. I knew I should have tried to find some seed money or
And see,
something.
and now one of the owners of Brew Nuts is opening a women's sports bar.
Oh,
Yeah,
work
so
brew
that is the
nuts.
funny. Yeah, right. Well, because they hosted a lot of different like women's
Yes.
sports events. Like I went and watched like a WNBA playoff game with my like girlfriend, and it was a lot of fun. It was so much fun actually, and like it was so cool to be in like this really space. I'm so excited for this opening. Like it's gonna be so cool.
Oh, I have to come visit.
When is
Cleveland's a
that?
little fucking gem. Cleveland's a gem, and I
Yeah.
will always say like it's
I
got things you
mean,
would not expect.
you're preaching to the
When
choir.
when does it open?
I think some. I think. I hope. I think this summer. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Spring,
Um
summer.
the last couple of things that I thought were worth noting. Um, the At the end of the movie, the mom looks at the boyfriend and like yells at him for it being his fault how she changed. Like it's Mr. J's fault that she
Oof.
became Joker the Harley Quinn, and it just there was that one of the next lines was you should be thankful Batman hasn't swooped down from the sky. And it reminded me of a comment that a family member made when I was working at the center and I got acrylic nails for the first time, and I showed up to Thanksgiving, and this person said, "You're lucky you work where you work." And I was like,
Oh,
"Is that like So I should be grateful that no one's gonna fucking murder me. Anyways, on a
No.
happier note. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, please, please, please.
Oh, I was gonna say, but that was something like my father, when I came out to him, he blamed my spouse for it.
Yeah.
And it was like that it was all their fault that I turned out this way.
But that's
And
true.
like,
Happy,
Like in
you
this
mean?
case, that's true.
yeah, you know what? Okay, he got that
Yeah,
right.
and
But
No, but in this
yeah,
case, it
or
was.
he maybe
In
knew
this
some
case, that's.
things.
yeah, they
I'm just
definitely were doing the
kidding.
long con, and then it was all in the then ultimate service of their own transitioning,
Yes,
then a
exactly.
decade after me. Like that was all. It was real like yeah, the seeds were planted. It
Yes.
was
Excellent.
layers.
Yes, I'm just kidding to people listening to this who don't know that
Exactly.
I'm just a
Yeah.
little
Mind your
stinker.
business. Mind your business. That's what I say
I'm
with
I'm
people.
assigned little stink. I was assigned little stinker at birth.
Oh, one of the like final lines that I thought was really beautiful and did kind of
Little fab.
um damn it. Damn it. Lil Elsabs, have you said?
Yeah, assigned little stinker at birth.
Yeah. But one of the things that Joker the Harlequin says to Mr. J is, "You were my happy beginning, and I think I needed more. I think I needed that more right now." And that really, really, you don't realize how fucked up your roots are until you see a healthy fucking leaf or something like that. I don't know if that's a good like
So real.
but that's what
No.
it very much so feels like in that line. Again, Vera, if you ever come across this podcast, wonderful, just
What
a
a genius.
masterful piece of work that you have probably changed so many lives and will change so many lives just by the ease of storytelling that
Yeah.
you somehow access. And I loved the mixed media of it all, like the random animation parts and and like how, again, kind of like unpolished is a word that like came to mind, but like how raw it feels.
Right?
Yeah.
Just fucking
You couldn't
gorgeous.
crack more eggs if you drove a Cybertruck by.
Bye. Damn it, Shauna. Uh, also, Shauna taught me what that
That
expression was, so that feels like a nice callback
Oh
to
my
me now
goodness.
understanding, the lingo. Okay, so at the end of every episode, we have to answer the seminal question: Who is the hottest character in The People's Joker?
Oh,
Jacqueline.
it's
Lorne Michaels.
Vera.
Oh yeah, Vera. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah, yeah.
end of the movie Joker
End of the
Harlequin
movie,
is
Vera.
so hot. I mean, like,
Yeah,
god damn, is she so hot? And
yeah,
and he
she
yes,
doesn't
is.
love a
Lorne
funny
Michaels.
girl. But like
No, she's
I'm
so
not.
hot
hot as
and she's
hell.
so funny and she's just like, oh, so fucking good.
Gorgeous.
So, and that outfit at
Also,
the end, the corset and
and the tits
I didn't
All
say
the tits.
specifically.
that, but
I
yes.
did. I'm saying it. Also, what does it say about me that my actual answer that I wrote down was Mr. J, because
Mm,
Oh, I get
he
it.
was kind of hot. He
Who
was
doesn't
super
like a
hot.
yeah.
toxic trans masked person? Come on.
Hello,
Fellas,
the
slide into
we
my DMs, please.
same,
Gaslight
same, same,
me.
same. Please, please. Okay, so I mean, first and foremost, Jacqueline, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you
Thanks
for having me.
for your genius insight and your just fantastic presence. And is there anything that you want to plug? Anything that you want to share?
Yeah. Watch Based on a True Story on Peacock, currently streaming. Watch I don't know when it's coming out, but um Nine Perfect Strangers season 2 I wrote and produced, and that's coming out um sometime later this year. It's very fun. We have a really great cast for the season. Nicole is obviously back, Miss Kidman herself, but
That bitch.
a new 9 strangers that are really wonderful. I think I can say who's in it. I think it's been announced. Murray Bartlett, Annie Murphy, Christine Baranski, and a whole host of other brilliant
Christine, oh my gosh, I love Christine Baranski
It's
and
a
Annie
great.
Murphy, but
Baranski.
like, oh my gosh,
They play mother
Murray
daughter.
Bartlett.
Yeah.
Murray Bartlett can do whatever he wants to me.
Oh, I mean, girl, but yes, so season 2 coming sometime soon to Hulu.
oh, this is exciting.
So, second sort of ish question. Um, one of the again the reason for the sort of like scheduling of this movie or of this episode was because we wanted to try to put it out before the
Oscars.
awful, yeah, the wretched whatever film.
Here's my hot take. I don't think that movie is as bad as people say it is, but I also don't think it's any good at all. So like,
Yeah,
it's like,
Okay.
it's a movie that's like super boring and like kind of okay. There are parts of it I don't hate, but I mostly hate it because
Is it the song with about
it's a bad musical, which is a bummer
yeah,
when you're making a musical.
yeah,
I don't think it's a very good movie, and but the biggest thing is like I resent it uh, because it's made.
yeah.
I'm so sick of like European like dudes being like, I'm going to make a movie about transness. I don't really want to engage with transness at all. And then of course
Right.
up until about a month ago, I was like, well, let's support our girl.
No,
But then turns out
get that bitch out of
she's the
here.
worst tweeter. And it's always a good reminder that you can hate trans people too. Like trans people can hate trans people too. Like some of us are bad. And
so
I was
there
just
are a
saying,
lot of people a lot of bad people who just happen to be trans, and that bitch is one of
right.
them.
Yeah.
Look, the best way to change hearts and minds is by knowing trans people. And unfortunately, that works in inverse. The Republicans only knew Caitlyn Jenner, and that sucks. But, like,
It's so true.
I
unfortunate.
just
You know what? If that was the only trans person I know, I hate us too. Fuck, man.
yeah,
For
that's
real.
true.
For
But at the
real.
same time, she's also espousing a lot of the same values as the Republicans. She doesn't want brown
Well,
people
that's
there.
which again just shows
She could
that it
be their
doesn't matter
diversity
that.
hire if they hadn't canceled all of their diversity programs.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, so anyways,
She's actually going to come full circle and get hired under her dead name. It's real unfortunate. Like that they're going to be like,
yikes.
they're like, no, we're actually you're cool again because we just don't pretending this last decade didn't count.
Oh yeah, no, those
Exactly.
tweets actually got her hired. She's going to be director of the FBI now.
I heard that.
Tweets,
I did
those
hear
tweets
that.
were really
And she'll be
popular.
hosting SNL next season.
Yeah, those tweets were really popular inside the White House.
Yeah. So we wanted to promote and like encourage people to watch trans-led, trans-created films that actually center transness and, like you said, engage with transness. So any other media that you would suggest, Jacqueline? Like perhaps the specific episode that you
Episode
are
6 of Queer as Folk,
Mhm.
of the reboot of Queer as Folk, is a good one. If you're only going to buy one off iTunes, you could probably get away with just watching that one. But some others, just like shouting out some other trans folks that I just love. And like, there's a movie called National Anthem from last year that my friend Eve Lindley is one of the stars of. A wonderful, beautiful trans actress. And she is incredible in it. There's a great band called Jasmine 4T that, she's kind of like I don't know if that's the name of the band or if that's just her music name and she has a band but she's awesome. Her album is, it just came out and is really good. And she's going on tour with Lucy Dacus. So the lesbians will be seeing her. I saw the TV Glow, I guess. Yeah. Is also.
We wanted to do another one, but we can still absolutely do another one. But the point was trying to get them out before the Oscars, just as a reminder that there's already great trans media that you can go ahead and watch instead of that one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Heck, even Chasing Amy, because we were doing Kevin Smith.
Chasing Amy, yes.
I loved it so much. We're gonna because we just did Clerks and we're gonna go through the Views universe because I love those movies. Like they're so again like just nerdy love letters to all of this.
Oh, I love it.
So,
And
stay.
and Kevin Smith's an ally, and I love that so much. And I'm like,
Love
it's
to
such
see it.
like,
An actual one, full circle, not
yeah,
Joss Whedon,
the
piece of shit. Actually, I can't believe I said his name. Fuck him. Bummer. Yay, Kevin Smith. But actually, so that's a great plug for our next episode, which is likely going to be Jane Silent Bob Strike Back / Mallrats, featuring the elusive aforementioned heterosexual cisgender best friend of mine. And I can't wait to have that diversity higher on here. It's great.
I do like
You're
that we
still
went from the 2 trans women episode that are like, all right, now we got to get like the cis white straight guy in, like really just like
he knows his role because he is the only one that has made it all, several iterations of this person, but also just imagine me welcoming a cis straight white man into my life, like willingly at this
it says a
point.
lot. Yeah.
It says a lot. So
There's room for
yeah,
2 at most. Like
check us out on Instagram at Real Hot Nerd Pod. You can follow our socials at Intuitive Blurred on Instagram, at Helen Pastels on Instagram, at Helen Pastels on Blue Sky, at Intuitive Blurred on X, because I'm a piece of shit and I haven't jumped ship yet. I actually did jump ship, but I just don't use it. But yeah,
you
thanks
need to.
for.
It's gotta contribute
I
to
know,
it
I'll
being
do my
better.
part. It's like when someone finally directly said to me, "You have to stop going to Target." I was like, "Ugh, I know. Thanks for calling me out. God damn it. I know I have to switch to Blue Sky. God damn it. We'll get there." Okay. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you all next time. Stay hot, smooches. Bye.